Verses 25 to 31. Seeing one of his brethren suffer wrong, he was moved with compassion towards the sufferer, and a just indignation at the wrongdoer, as men in public stations should be, and he avenged him that was oppressed, and smote the Egyptian, which, if he had been only a private person, he could not lawfully have done, but he knew that his commission from heaven would bear him out, and he supposed that his brethren, who could not but have some knowledge of the promise made to Abraham, that the nation that should oppress them God would judge, would have understood that God by his hand would deliver them, for he could not have had either presence of mind or strength of body to do what he did, if he had not been clothed with such a divine power as evinced a divine authority. If they had but understood the signs of the times, they might have taken this for the dawning of the day of their deliverance, but they understood not, they did not take this, as it was designed, for the setting up of a standard, and sounding of a trumpet, to proclaim Moses their deliverer, as Israel's judge. This he gave a specimen of, the very next day, in offering to accommodate matters between two contending Hebrews, wherein he plainly assumed a public character. v. 26. He showed himself to them as they strove, and, putting on an air of majesty and authority, he would have set them at one again, and as their prince have determined the controversy between them, saying, Sirs, you are brethren by birth and profession of religion, why do you wrong one to another? For he observed that, as in most strifes, there was a fault on both sides, and therefore, in order to peace and friendship, there must be a mutual remission and condescension. When Moses was to be Israel's deliverer out of Egypt, he slew the Egyptians, and so delivered Israel out of their hands, but, when he was to be Israel's judge and lawgiver, he ruled them with the golden scepter, not the iron rod. He did not kill and slay them when they strove, but gave them excellent laws and statutes, and decided upon their complaints and appeals made to him, Ex 18:16. But the contending Israelite that was most in the wrong thrust him away, v. 27, would not bear the reproof, though a just and gentle one, but was ready to fly in his face, with, who made thee a ruler and a judge over us? Proud and litigious spirits are impatient of check and control. Rather would these Israelites have their bodies ruled with rigor by their taskmasters than be delivered, and have their minds ruled with reason, by their deliverer. The wrongdoer was so enraged at the reproof given him that he upbraided Moses with the service he had done to their nation in killing the Egyptian, which, if they had pleased, would have been the earnest of further and greater service. Wilt thou kill me, as thou didst the Egyptian yesterday? v. 28, charging that upon him as his crime, and threatening to accuse him for it, which was the hanging out of the flag of defiance to the Egyptians, and the banner of love and deliverance to Israel. Hereupon Moses fled into the land of Midian, and made no further attempt to deliver Israel till 40 years after. He settled as a stranger in Midian, married, and had 2 sons, by Jethro's daughter, v. 29. Now let us see how this serves Stephen's purpose. They charged him with blaspheming Moses, in answer to which he retorts upon them the indignities which their fathers did to Moses, which they ought to be ashamed of, and humbled for, instead of picking quarrels thus, under pretense of zeal for the honor of Moses, with one that had as great a veneration for him as any of them had. They persecuted him for disputing in defense of Christ and his gospel, in opposition to which they set up Moses and his law, but, saith he, you had best take heed, lest you hereby do as your fathers did, refuse and reject one whom God has raised up to be to you a prince and a savior. You may understand, if you will not willfully shut your eyes against the light, that God will, by this Jesus, deliver you out of a worse slavery than that in Egypt. Take heed then of thrusting him away, but receive him as a ruler and a judge over you. Lest you hereby fare as your fathers fared, who for this were very justly left to die in their slavery, for the deliverance came not till 40 years after. This will be the issue of it, you put away the gospel from you, and it will be sent to the Gentiles. You will not have Christ, and you shall not have him, so shall your doom be. Mt 23:38, 39. Stephen here proceeds in his story of Moses, and let any one judge whether these are the words of one that was a blasphemer of Moses or no. Nothing could be spoken more honorably of him. Here is the vision which he saw of the glory of God at the bush, v. 30 when 40 years had expired, during all which time Moses was buried alive in Midian, and was now grown old, and one would think past service, that it might appear that all his performances were products of a divine power and promise, as it appeared that Isaac was a child of promise by his being born of parents stricken in years. Now, at 80 years old, he enters upon that post of honor to which he was born, in recompense for his self-denial at 40 years old, where God appeared to him, in the wilderness of Mount Sinai, v. 30. And, when he appeared to him there, that was holy ground, v. 33, which Stephen takes notice of, as a check to those who prided themselves in the temple, that holy place, as if there were no communion to be had with God but there, whereas God met Moses, and manifested himself to him, in a remote obscure place in the wilderness of Sinai. They deceive themselves if they think God is confined to places. He can bring his people into a wilderness, and there speak comfortably to them. How he appeared to him, in a flame of fire, for our God is a consuming fire, and yet the bush, in which this fire was, though combustible matter, was not consumed, which, as it represented the state of Israel in Egypt, where, though they were in the fire of affliction, yet they were not consumed, so perhaps it may be looked upon as a type of Christ's incarnation, and the union between the divine and human nature. God, manifested in the flesh, was as the flame of fire manifested in the bush. 3. How Moses was affected with this. He wondered at the sight, v. 31. It was a phenomenon with the solution of which all his Egyptian learning could not furnish him. He had the curiosity at first to pry into it. I will turn aside now, and see this great sight, but the nearer he drew the more he was struck with amazement, and he trembled, and durst not behold, durst not look steadfastly upon it, for he was soon aware that it was not a fiery meteor, but the angel of the Lord, and no other than the angel of the covenant, the Son of God himself. This set him a trembling. Stephen was accused for blaspheming Moses and God, ch. 6:11, as if Moses had been a little God, but by this it appears that he was a man, subject to like passions as we are, and particularly that of fear, upon any appearance of the divine majesty and glory.